And it's Transform Your Relationships Live. I'm Laura Rubinstein. We're here with the awesome and amazing Dr. Rhoberta Shaler at the beginning of 2021. Hi, Dr.
Woohoo!
Rhoberta. Woohoo!
Hi, Laura. Yes, 2021, here we come.
I know. I think so many people are ready. And we have a big question to tackle today of how will this year be different? So many people are like anticipating a whole different world just because a date changed. Oops, I'm not sure it will be. But let's talk about what intentions we can set and what we're doing. Let's go into this year consciously.
hmm I mean, really, come on. When you turn from 47 to 48, yesterday and today, do you really feel different? Probably not. And I think a year change, we have this big whoop to do about it all. But we just, aside from people, I saw a definition of New Year's resolutions this morning, and was couched in the idea of a child saying, "What are New Year's resolutions?" And the person said, "They're your to-do list for the first week of January."
It's a great one. That's a great definition. And, for me, for years, New Year's resolutions has been out the door. I always talk about intentions. And I think that's kind of where we want to start is it is a new year. Is there a new approach you're going to take this year? Are there things you want to um, take a look at that you took a look at last year that didn't work or did work? Or what are you going to keep the same? What are you going to change? It's not about this big, oh my gosh, vision that it could be, but what is the day-to-day small actions that you're going to take that you will help you have a life that you feel more comfortable with, more fulfilled in, especially in this new normal that we're in.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Yes, we have an arbitrary date that we do it, but that's a good thing. I think that at least once a year we stop and say, hey, what's working, what's not, what might I like to do differently? And ask yourself the question, have my values changed in any way? Are certain things more important to me? Like maybe after 2020, you've realized that relationships are far more important than you thought. And maybe that will make a shift for you. Maybe you found that not being able to just go and see people when you wanted to changed your mood, changed your attitude, changed your excitement about your work or something. So it's a good refresher to just take some time and say, will I have a new approach to anything? Will I do anything differently? And I don't think it's a wholesale get rid of last year and woohoo, let's have a different this year. But I do think it's worth using it as an arbitrary day to say, okay, what might I like to do differently? What might I need more of? What would I like to have less of? And what am I in charge of in that regard?
And I think this whole past year has challenged us to do that more frequently anyway. I mean, like, at least I do. I feel like every day I have to take a look at my approach to the day and look at my values, as you said. Like, okay, if my value is health, I have time now, or I have less commitments to distract me from that, shall we say, or I have more commitments, so I have to work it in. And in fact, we're sitting more, at least I am, in front of our beautiful screens here and cameras. And how do I work it in? And how do I do this without going to a gym or getting together with somebody to go work out? So am I willing to, have my health and work with this new normal? And there are so many creative things that come out of asking those questions. How can I have
hmm
both, right?
Yeah, that's a great example. So let's talk about it more. I mean, I looked deeply into buying a standing desk and was I going to buy one that went up and down and was it electric or what was it? And I spent about 3 hours agonizing over this decision. And then I realized, just a minute, I work at home. I can get up anytime I want. I have a kitchen I can go to where I stand up. If I am real about the organization in my office, I can place things where I have to reach them, where I have to stand up to get them, where I have to do those things. I can just be a little more intentional about that. And at any time that there is a break in my schedule, I can be out the door in my neighborhood do 20 minutes and come back.
Yeah.
I do not need a standing desk, was the way that I finally figured
And
it
me,
out.
I'm like the opposite, but I got a standing desk over a year ago. So I was like, I know I sit a lot and I can choose to stand while I'm working. I don't have to sit because I know I need to be in front of this computer more hours than is good for my sitting body. So a standing working desk helps me to
Yeah.
do that. So
But it's
and
that thought process,
yeah, it
that
really
you would,
is. It's the thought process of what is the approach you're going to take to live those values. I really think that word is key. Like, what values are you focusing in on? If you'd like to put that in our notes here today, you're welcome to be a part of this conversation and do that. But as we focus on our values, then we can make decisions in alignment more consistently. And I think that is so powerful if we start our year by not saying I should be doing this or somebody else is like doing this and therefore I need to do this or somebody else says this about me. But if we stay centered in our values, health, whatever it is, family, relationships, um, growth, uh, positivity, whatever it is, then you can make decisions from there.
yeah, absolutely. And I always have my clients do a little exercise that I created called the value shuffle so that people really understand deeply and go into the thought process of determining what their values are. So it's a worthwhile exercise for everyone to do, to know that your values match what you do all day, and then you will feel more peace, and that's important.
So, what is the exercise that you call the
Mm,
value shuffle?
no, no.
Or,
um, no, that's something I do for my clients, but
oh, I see.
it is important that we look at our values and that we know what they are. And
I
people will
see.
often say, "Oh, yeah, I know what my values are," but they haven't looked deeply. They don't know if push came to shove, which one would take priority, and that's important to know. When I was developing the value shuffle exercise, part of it was based on my great study of yoga and Hindu traditions. And in the Hindu tradition, they have things called the yamas and the niyamas, 5 things you must do, 5 things you should never do. But instead of putting them in 2 groups of 5, they very wisely put them in order. So number 1 is ahimsa, which is nonviolence. But number 5 is asteya, which is non-stealing. So you know that if your child was starving, you would steal to not do violence, because the number 1 is violence. So when I created the exercise for my clients, it not only helps them determine what their values are, but puts them in order. And I think that's important for us all to know so that we can make good decisions. So to take the ones that you had, if you just took family, health, relationships, contentment, a few things like that, how would you put them in order?
Hmm.
Right? Like if you had to
Mhm.
make a decision, your health over your relationship, what would be the components of that decision?
Mm. That's really powerful to be able to take the values and know what's most important. And I also like looking at the values and taking a deep dive. How does that manifest in your life? And what is it in alignment with what is your value? Like,
Hmm.
okay, so you say you want health, but you're not getting out and walking. You're
Yeah.
sitting. So then there's just definitely going to be a opportunity first of all to say, oh, I guess I that neither don't have that as a value, or I'm all talk and no walk, and
Yeah. Well, it's like as we've talked about before, in other contexts, Laura, that mantra that I tell everybody to use, which is ABB, always believe behavior.
yes.
So believe your own behavior. If you say, well, I'm really into health, great. What's your behavior around really into health? And if you examine that, as you say, do a deep dive and you find, well, I'm sometimes into my health, or on a good day, I'm into my health, and then break it down. What am I eating? How am I moving? What am I thinking? What emotional old patterns are holding me down? These are all components of health. What am I doing about those? These gloss over bucket terms really require sitting down and having a look at them and breaking them down and seeing what does that really mean to me personally. It's really easy to talk about the big buckets.
It is. And when it comes to what we actually are doing and what we say we value, if they're out of alignment, then there's an opportunity to look at why. Are you living somebody else's value?
Or living up to someone else's expectations in your head. Like so many times when I'm working with people who have had a hijackal parent, like I did, I'll use myself as an example. Maybe I'm cooking and all of a sudden I'll hear that voice, you're taking too much skin off the potatoes. We're not made of money. That's my mother, and she was horrible, and I'm like, back off. you know, Understanding that the expectations of other people that could be still running, like, is very important. And I don't think we get enough encouragement to make the shift from being a child up to the age of 18 and then developing your own value system to see the sift and sort. Like I say so many times, if I had a way to change the world, I'd get every kid at 21 to do a course with me that would say, okay, let's see what you got, what you want to keep, what you want to dump, and what you want to embrace as who you are now, as opposed to all the things you were given.
Mm.
And to really figure that out. Am I doing this because I was told? That old story about the kid asking the mother why she cut off the ends of the ham, and she said, I don't know, go and ask your grandmother. And she said, I don't know, ask your great grandmother. So she asked her great grandmother and said, I don't know why your mother does it, but that was the size of pan I had. you know so we could be living a life like that we're doing it because someone else told us it was the right thing to do, or the appropriate way to do something, or the right way to think, or the right way to calibrate. And then you don't think about it deeply anymore. No, that's the way we do it. Why? Why do we do it that way? Does it work for me? Is that a good idea? So this whole idea that we set a new approach, this is a wonderful sort of mental house cleaning to say, why do I do what I do? Why do I cut off the ends of the ham? I have many sizes of pans. I do not have to make it fit into an 8 by 8 cake pan or something. Um, and maybe I don't even eat ham anymore. So why do I have this ham? And why do I think that that's what you have to eat at this particular holiday? And is that okay with me? Who am I trying to please? What's going on? So when we start opening our minds in that way, we get a lot of freedom. And this is a great year to do it because we don't have as many distractions.
Yeah. And also, what happens when we want to live a new value or we want to live a value we're not used to living? I like to think about somebody, could be a public figure, a person in history, a mentor who is living that value, and start immersing myself in their world, whether it is
Mm,
through reading their books, their blogs, history about them, watching movies that exemplify those same values. I remember when I was single and I really wanted to be a wife. Like what is the values that a wife would hold, the kind of wife I want to be. So I would watch movies that had the same kind of women that expressed their power but yet
yeah.
had great love. And I would watch them over and over again because there was something in there I was resonating with, but I couldn't yet embody. And making that transition, it was a conscious effort. And if that didn't quite work, I tried something else. I read a book, I talked to friends, I got a therapist, whatever it took to transition, I was clear on the value.
Yeah, that's great. And I would extrapolate that to something that I've been doing during the pandemic and make it even a little easier. I started watching series about tiny houses. And I'm thinking, why am I doing this? I love the thinking that the people had as to why they chose to live in a tiny house and then how they decided what's important to me. What do I
Mm,
want in this tiny house? How do I work in the world? What needs to be convenient? What level of inconvenience am I willing to put up with? How they made the decisions. I just find that fascinating. So similar to you're
mhm,
looking at, what do I want to embody? Just doing something like that, or watching. There's a show called Never Too Small on YouTube. And it's just about tiny apartments. But the same thing, the same approach is, why do I have these items? What's important to me to have? There is no right answer. It's, again, dive into it. There's
mhm.
no right answer that, you should be a minimalist to have the least number of things possible. Then you're doing it right. We have lived in a world that told us what we should do, and we have accepted, many of us accepted that. And then some of us have said, hey, I'm going to have a look at that. I'm going to get rid of that. Nobody's going to should on me. And and I will make up my own. And that's where freedom resides.
And don't shit on yourself either. I mean, uh, bring forth, if there's a angst, a tension in your own being, it's an opportunity to explore what value is not being expressed and lived the way you really want to live it. I know that I was doing a lot of creative work before the pandemic in groups, and when we went into quarantine and social distancing, we couldn't do that. And I was like, oh my gosh, and I didn't really quite get it until a couple months in when I did a painting online class. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this nurtures my soul. I feel so much better. This relieved that tension and or fulfilled something that was missing. So we have to be curious and explore our tension and not just try to
Mhm.
ignore and deny the reality and just go back the way things were, because they're not that way anymore.
Yeah,
And we could
that's
be
so
putting people
good.
in danger if we do that, but
Hmm.
we can still live a fulfilled life. We just have to do a little bit more exploration. So it's such a great opportunity to really get to know ourselves, to transform ourselves, to deeper express ourselves authentically and have that alignment.
Mm. Yes, that's so good. And it is, it
Juicy. It's
is,
a juicy time for us.
it is. It's very exciting. Like, all of this looking at all of these shows has caused me question about everything that I own. Like, why do I own it? And in 2000, I wrote a little book called Pack Your Own Parachute. And in there, I had this little test, like when you are having things in your home, is it functional? Is it beautiful? Or is it memorable?
Mm.
And that's a quick way to find out if you want to keep something, right? Do I keep it because it's functional? Yeah, great. Do I keep it around for beauty? And do I keep it because it holds memories? And then the caveat to that one was, if it holds memories and it's an object, could you take a photograph of it and still get the same benefit
Mm.
having it around? And that simplified a whole lot of things, but I have to do that over and over and over and over and over, because I will just get more and more and more. And these kinds of ideas, when you have too many things to look after, or you feel like you're not using the things that you have, these all become energy leaks. Like, why do
Yes.
we have storage units? I do not understand. I've used them. I understand why I had one, but why do we have this preponderance of people saying, "Oh, well, we'll just get a storage unit"? If Unless you're downsizing from an office to a home and you have an interim period of time to make a decision, why do we store things as a general population? Sure, there are reasons why we store things, but why do we have this idea that, okay, well, I've got all this stuff. I'll just go and give somebody a whole lot of money to keep it for me on a monthly basis. And I may never visit it, but I've got it. Somehow makes me feel like, yeah, I'm good. I got stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Or I'm safe, or there's a fear of letting go. And this is where a professional organizer, a really good one, comes in. I can attest to this because I've been in this situation where I've accumulated stuff and I can't let it go. In fact, I have had to have conversations with pieces of paper to let it go. And I wasn't able to have that conversation until I had some coaching from a professional organizer who helped me do things like what you were saying. Is it functional, beautiful, or memorable? But her question was, can I find that information on the internet? If I can, done. Now that seems obvious to some people, but to me, this piece of paper was gold waiting to help me. And
mm.
and it really wasn't. It was just taking up space.
Well, yeah, and that's a good example of the differences that we have because this morning I was in a meeting with my team and we were generating, we've done a lot of work on SEO and gathering information and running tests and running software and things. And so we finally came down with the top 8 words. And so me and my trusty pen and my book, I was writing them down. And one of the team members said, where are you putting them in asana? And I said, I'm writing them down in my book. And then it was like, but we all need to see them, right? But what's important to me, and I've reduced it greatly, I made it through the whole of 2021, and I this is the 2020 book, and I made it through the whole of 2020 rather, and I just used one book to keep my notes, where before I would have a whole lot more. But then there are things that I can do differently. Like I keep a folder of topics for my podcast every time something new comes up. Well, that folder does not have to be a folder. It can be a folder on a computer. But until you make those shifts,
Yeah.
there's something you could say, oh, well, there's a small part of that organization I could do differently. I don't have to change everything to digital, but I can move my list into a folder. I can start doing things differently in a new system. I do not have to take apart everything I have in order to do it. So, this again comes with being gentle with yourself. This whole idea of New Year's resolutions is really a pretty rough, raw process. Like you were encouraged. I don't know what they did this year. I don't get into New Year's resolutions anymore, like you said, but it was pretty much like, okay, fresh start. Everything in your life is going to be different. You're going to exercise 6 times a week and only eat wheatgrass, and you're going to be fine. Well, those broad strokes are guaranteed to fail. Absolutely guaranteed to fail. But if you said, I'm going to exercise for sure twice a week, then do something that you can meet. Do something that is absolutely realistic, that you could do it. And then the next 3 months, add a little stretch. Could I do it 3 times a week? I walk. So, as I said earlier, like I will just, okay, I don't have a client for an hour, walk, away I go, right?
Yeah.
But
It's about bringing in new practices, and but they don't have to be giant steps. You don't have to go out and
yes,
buy an elliptical machine and think you're going to be on it 12 hours a day. No, if you do, well, then you definitely want to be on it at some point, but or donate it to somebody who will. That's always good too. You can
just
feel
don't
good.
use it as a clothes rack.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but if that is, we're going to be gentle, right? We're going to just be gentle with ourselves. And what that means is making gentle shifts. So when you think about, I should be exercising, you could change that to, I could be exercising. Well,
Mm-hmm,
yeah, I could be. I could take a walk. I could just march in place. I
mm-hmm.
do that now, by the way. It's a really good exercise, believe it or not.
I fell over a YouTube video where this woman lost 80 pounds and she never left her apartment. And all the exercise she did in a 1 bedroom apartment, she did by walking around her apartment.
Mhm. Yep, and there are walking videos. I love Leslie Sansom's videos. Walking at home, you just need like a 4 foot space, and you're good to go. Really don't need it. And so yeah, so change your shoulds into coulds, and then watch yourself get into action. See if you take more action by just shifting the words, because should is like, I'm bad, I can't do it, I stop myself. But I could be exercising more.
Mhm.
Yeah, when could I? What could I do? Oh yeah. Like you get your brain working for you. I'm a hypnotherapist, so I think about the way we speak to ourselves that could really empower us versus stop us. And we have a really powerful tool here if we use it well.
Yes, yes. Use your kidney, you know.
Oh yeah, that one.
Yeah, we have this opportunity to have a fresh thought and to have a fresh start and to have a new approach. And it doesn't mean a wholesale everything up in the air. It can simply be small incremental improvement. When I wrote the book Kaizen for Couples, Smart Steps to Save, Sustain, and Strengthen Your Relationship, I chose the word Kaizen so carefully because the Japanese word that means small, positive, incremental improvements. Like
Yes.
not a wholesale change everything and put in a new regime. It's like, let's do that one a little differently. Let's do that one a little less. Let's do this one a little more. And slowly you make positive improvements that you can stick with, that they hold, that they're sustainable. And that's what you want, because if you don't sustain them and you create these big goals for yourself and you start feeling like a failure. You start saying, "Oh well, I can't do it. I never do anything right. I don't know why I bother." And then you get into a downward spiral. But if you're doing little additions, little stretches, little changes, over time, you do a little change every month. By next year, you've got 12 new things that you're doing and maybe 12 things that you gave up. That's big.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing as from my hypnotherapy side is that we are more powerful than we know. And you can use your power in a couple of different ways. One is to take you down that negative path when you start shooting on yourself and start trying to make these big, ginormous changes that ultimately fail. And then you're like powerfully telling yourself, I'm not going to do well, right? But what if you just did those, what you're saying, those tiny little steps, changes like changing your shoulds into coulds and acknowledging yourself for and slowly working the power of your brain to work for you. So you can use your power of your brain either way, and you can change it at any time. This is how powerful we are. And I love that you're talking about this with the Kaizen and the incremental steps. And it could be a big step that you take, but when you put the expectation on it, then you're using your brain against you. When you just say, hey, what's possible here? What could I do? It
Mhm.
opens up a whole new world to taking those baby steps that ultimately can become a big shift.
Yes, and that's the joy of it, because as you take the baby steps and you find that you can do them, you can sustain them, you maybe even enjoy them and you feel much better for having done it, then it opens the doorway to possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
I could do something else differently. And that's exciting. But it's all in your head, like you said. I
And
mean,
that's
it's all
exciting.
in your head. Therefore, maybe you need some guidance from Laura or I or somebody, but um, because that's new to you and you don't know how to get your head around it, and you have to let go of some expectations that were heavy and implanted, and that's worthwhile doing because then you have that skill forever, right?
Yay! Yes, as you build more habits and positive, steps, you shift your whole life. It's really an opportunity. We do this without expectation, without shooting on ourselves, and by being gentle. And I think that's kind of where um, where we've given people today, and what I'm taking away from today. How about you?
I think those are all important things. And the idea of possibilities, we love that idea. Here in the United States, we call it the American dream. But, how about just having it be your dream, that you do a few things differently and you see the result and you say, I've been successful Maybe I could do a few more things. So we look at the possibilities as opposed to huge chunks of life that we want to change. Look at a few small things that would be an improvement, that the quality of life would be better, that we would look at ourselves in a different light and say, hey, you were successful at that. That's the direction we want to be going.
Atta girl. Atta girl, right?
Yeah, yoo-hoo. Yeah,
Look at the
let's do that.
possibilities, acknowledge your stuff, take the baby steps, and stay in the curiosity of what's possible.
Yeah.
It's great.
And know you can. Know you can. Be the little engine. I think I can. I think I can. Yes, you can. All right.
Yes, I can. I did it. Yay. Well, that's a great positive note to end on today. And I know we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another Transform Your Relationship show. Thank you, Dr. Berta.
Thank you, Laura. And everybody, go look at the possibilities. What little thing can you change that you could tell us about in 2 weeks?
Yeah, would love to hear what shifts have happened. So we'll be back then. Bye for now,
Bye.
everyone.